Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Surf and Sales podcast. We are in the middle of 2024. It is almost August, late July. This is season 5, episode 26, as we quickly approach our 400th or 500th episode, somewhere in there. I'm not sure. I am Richard Harris, one of your co-hosts of the Surf and Sales podcast and the event, which is happening in November. So who doesn't want to go to Costa Rica in November, Scott? Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody who doesn't want to do that?
I know a couple people who said that they don't like sand.
That was where, yes.
and that's been the determining factor that led them to not want to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you, by the way. Like, it's like, really, sand? Okay.
It was a new one for me. A new objection that I was ill prepared for.
Yeah, I still haven't figured how to handle that one, by the way. So
I haven't either. Sometimes it's just not your ICP, and it's better to just move on.
Yeah. So with that being said, I'm super excited today. This is a woman we were introduced to recently, just met. She is known as the Queen of Sales. And so we are super excited to have you here, Rhasheeda Hughes. And I hope I said that right. Correct me if I didn't. Welcome to Surf and Sales, and tell everybody a little about you. Like, what is your perspective from a sales perspective? What do you do? What are you known for? What's your specialty?
Absolutely. So again, I am super excited to be here today and have a conversation today with Richard and Scott. So a little bit about Rhasheeda Hughes. I'm born and raised from Cleveland, Ohio. Currently reside in the ATL. Love Atlanta. I am known for going into sales organizations and turning around their sales organization. So I am that person where if you're trying to build a high performance sales team, whether it's from an AE team or SDR team, I've done both. I am putting in those processes. I am helping your team win, uncovering those roadblocks, bringing in the proper tech stack. And also I'm big with promoting, so moving people up within the sales ranks as well too. I've been able to dibble and dabble into a lot of high profile tech companies, and even from a startup perspective, from real estate to fintech and all in between. And I love what I do. I started off in sales. I've been in sales over 20 years, and I started off as just an SDR and worked my way up into sales leadership. And so currently where I have kind of landed and planted my feet is in that SDR world. And again, I've managed AEs, enterprise AEs, and all in between. But I came back to that SDR world because that is kind of the root of sales. And I wanted to make sure that the SDRs coming up within this sales community or world, they have the proper sales foundation to be able to flourish within their sales career.
That's awesome. So go ahead.
Do you think that foundation for 2024 and beyond is different than it was in 2020 and 2015?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Tell us more about that. How has that foundation evolved and changed?
Technology is the big thing. When I started, and I teased with my team all the time, I was calling out of the yellow pages and white pages, and there was no CRM, there was no Salesforce.
Oh yeah, Hubspot, we're in that same boat. We're in that same boat.
Yeah, Scott. Here, by the way, Scott. Here's my new joke that you can throw at me from now on. Is that Richard's been in sales so long that he sold in the 1900s.
Oh my God! Yeah. There you
go. I was like, I've been waiting to tell Scott that he can use this on me because I know he will.
All right, so Rasheeda's selling out of the yellow pages in the phone book.
Yes, and so now when you look at it, there's so much technology. So when a salesperson tells me that they can't close a deal, I laugh in the inside. I said, we didn't even have prospects. We didn't even have any technology that would tell you, hey, this person went on your website and is interested in you or something to that. There was none of that. You had to just cold turkey outreach and get on a phone. We didn't even have email back then. And so again, I tell people now, you have so much technology, you have to figure out what's your sales formula. So in my SDRs, I'm big with finding your sales formula. Figure out what you're good at, whether it's jamming on the phone, sending emails, connecting with folks on LinkedIn or using social media. You got to get good at one of those skills, bottom line. If you're not going to get good at those skills, at least one, you're going to fail in sales. I'm big with the phone. I love the phone still. I know people are intimidated with the phone, but I'm that phone girl. Get on the phone, have the conversations, and I want to set the meeting right then and there. I'm not an email person, but I can write a good email. I also push my SDRs to have good email writing sales skills. It's what's in it for me, get in, get out. You know, before emails were really fancy and colorful and click here and stuff popping out at you. You know, you have to understand the temperature of the prospects right now. And the temperature of the prospects are right now. I use kind of that Amazon algorithm, what's in it for them. If they don't hear what's in it for them, you've already lost that client from even engaging with you, whether it's through telephone, email, or even LinkedIn.
That's great. Where, as you know, as the tectonic plates shift in the SDR world and technology takes that next step, you know, we're talking about the AI stuff, right? How are you seeing that affect the role? What is your opinion? Is it gonna kill us all off in the next 5 years? Is it gonna kill off a percentage, but there's still got to be a human running the machine? Like, what do you see since you're dealing with this on a day-to-day basis?
I think AI is going to be an assistant for successful salespeople. And you have to incorporate now technology in order to be a successful salesperson. So high level where I'm seeing people falling off if they can't get on the tech role. They're struggling with the tech stacks that your corporation or company is using. I do not feel like AI is going to wipe away salespeople because I'm a firm believer in people buy from people still. And so even with the chat box and all this great stuff popping up on people's website, people still want to interact with a person. That's sales. If you look at the core sales, people buy from people. When you think about purchasing a car or a luxury car, people don't care about price. It's more of the experience. What is the experience I'm going to have with this salesperson that I want to continuously go back and continuously purchase from? So when you're in this kind of sales role, and it's a yin and yang, but AI will not take over, in my opinion. It's going to be an assistance to proper salespeople who are going to be able to incorporate tech into their sales pitch and become successful. So what I tell salespeople is now, one, you need to learn AI. You need to figure out where it fits out within your sales formula and use it. Do not get overwhelmed with all the AI because you got to figure out what one or two tech stacks AI is going to work for you and use it and get good at it. Because some of this stuff is going to fizzle. It's like the .coms. Remember there were 1 billion .coms and then it kind of fizzled down to your top 10. So don't listen to the noise. Go with what's going to help you convert and make you money.
Do you see an increased level of fear and kind of aversion to the phone amongst younger people that you're talking to entering this SDR world?
Yes, absolutely. So it's that confidence. I call it swag. They don't have that swag to talk on the phone because again, they grew up, they're YouTube babies is what I call them. They grew up with YouTube, that Instagram, Twitter kind of thing. No, not calling them babies, but that's how they grew up. You know, they didn't have conversation. And so where I come in is conversation rules the nation. And if you cannot have a conversation about what you're selling and build a relationship, I'm not buying from you. I don't care how good the product is. I've had people from top companies reach out to me and I know the product is good, but because that salesperson couldn't build a relationship with me, I don't want to buy from you. It's that thing I said again, people are buying from people still. You got to be able to build a relationship. You have to be relatable. You got to make them laugh. You got to make them feel good about the purchase. Purchase is still an emotional piece. It's emotional when people purchase. It's an emotion with it. And if I feel comfortable spending $100,000 with you because we've been laughing and talking about sports or whatever, me swiping my card is there's no emotion with that because I'm enjoying the experience. And so I've taught my SDRs to create an experience when you're on the phone with these people and be relatable too. Don't just go for the pitch. Be relatable. Hey, I see you're in LA. Is it sunny? I mean, anything, or talk about a topic. And so it's teaching our SDRs that to build relationships. I think, unfortunately, with technology, people don't know how to build just genuine relationships. And I think that's still important in a core of a good salesperson. You're able to build good relationships.
Look, I'll speak and say that even though we didn't have technology, I wasn't necessarily great at building relationships younger. And I don't, partly that is a little bit of a joke, but that's true, is like, it's those soft skills that you're talking about, right? And I think even to get to the point of having that, we've got to find ways to help people. And this is not generationally intended. We just got to get people to get out of their own way and be willing to at least listen to something different. They don't even have to try it right now. I just need them to listen to try something different. I just got off a training session before this, and that was a big topic of, well, I'm just not comfortable. It's like, okay, well, why aren't you comfortable? And what would make you comfortable before I just tell them to get over it? So, so how did you go? And, what made you go into sales? Were you like, you got a tremendous amount of energy. You can feel it, right? I can hear it in your voice, but I can feel it too. Were you always that kid? And by the way, did you grow up on the east side or the west side of Cleveland? Because I lived in Cleveland for a year and a half. So,
I grew up in the east side, Shaker Heights, Ohio. So yes,
I know exactly where you are. Yes. Yeah, I lived on Coventry Road above Grum's Sub Shop, if you know where that is, for all the old school.
Yes, I did. Coventry is great times. One of my favorite places to visit when I go home. My dad put me into sales. I remember I graduated from college in 2008, so it was around the recession, when it was really, really bad. And I had went to school to become get in public relations. I wanted to be a newscaster. And my dad told me, it was like the mid of my senior year in college, and he's like, "You're not doing that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like,
"I'm paying for your education. You're not doing that."
That is exactly what he said. And I'm just like, you spent all this money on my public relations degree, and like, what do you mean? I'm like, "I'm going to CNN, baby." He's like, "You're not. The economy's too bad. They're not gonna hire you." I mean, my dad was straightforward. He was a straight shooter. And he's like, "You're getting into sales." I was like, "Dad, I can't sell." He was like, "You can sell. You know how to talk. Interpersonal communication skills. You'll be fine." He said, "I have a connection at a bank, and you're gonna work at this bank." Went to the bank, worked at the corporate office in their sales department. He had a connection. And I remember the first day walking on that sales floor, I was terrified. One, a lot of these folks were a lot older than me. Two, it was mainly guys. And I was just like, I don't know about this. And I remember grasping onto one of the top ladies on the team. Her name was Miss Jewel, and she taught me the game to a T. Within 6 to 8 months, I was going to President's Club. I was hitting my numbers out the water. My manager loved me. I fell in love with it because I was building relationships and changing people's lives at the same time. And from there, I just fell in love with sales and never stopped. And so I really appreciate my dad widening and opening up a door for me, because sometimes, I'm a very determined person. And so for him but I had to listen to my dad. I can't fight with my dad. It's a losing battle. I will lose.
Will you come talk to our teenage sons, because we both have a challenge with that, where they don't,
Yeah, my kids have no problem fighting with me.
Absolutely.
No, it's lose. You would lose every time because he's bringing facts. I'm very grateful for that, though, because coming from the African-American community, you're not sometimes told that, hey, this might not be the right fit. And I don't want to set you up for failure. My dad was big with that of he never wanted to set his children up for failure. Mm-hmm. And pivoting me into that sales role built my confidence, built my swag, of course, my bank account as well, too. But it opened the doors to networking with some phenomenal people that even that bank in 2008, I still talk to a lot of those people still. They're retired, but again, you build some phenomenal relationships being in sales that you have friends for life. I tell people all the time, do not burn bridges in sales because you connect with people left and right and you're going to need them.
What do you, let's talk, you brought up two very interesting things. Like, we talked about this a little bit ahead of time. So you are an African-American woman in a sales community, which is predominantly male, still probably predominantly Caucasian. Has it gotten better since 2008? And it's 2020, I hate to say it, it's been 16 years. Holy shit. Is it better? Is it still the same? Is it, here's the good and here's the bad? Like, because I don't know.
I will say this. So it's gotten better. It's great to see my sisters and brothers in sales roles, doors being open. Has it progressed of how I would like it to progress? Absolutely not. I'll be transparent. A lot of times when I go into these corporations, I'm the only woman of color in a leadership role. I went through some identity crisis of, should I be here? Am I qualified to be here? And I got a master's degree and I've been doing sales for 16 years and still had a crisis during my being a sales leader and being the only Black woman in leadership. And I had to get a therapist about it. Like, I'm gonna be transparent. And when I talk to a lot of particularly Black leaders, they go through this too of identity. Should I be here? It's only me. I have to continuously fight sometimes. I'm not heard sometimes. There's that microaggression. I want someone else to be here with me. And it's a mental battle, but thank goodness, one, I have a very strong family. I have a very strong tribe. I have some great mentors up under my belt who walked me through that, and my therapist as well too. But it's tough, let's be clear. But I think once I walked out of that door with that situation, I was a badass then. I said, I'm comfortable with where I'm at and I deserve to be here. And I'm gonna stand here 10 toes down, I'm gonna own it, and I'm gonna do my best. And I think that's when like the daisy opened and it was just sunshine on me kind of thing. And that's what I want to tell my Black folks in tech and in sales leadership, or you in sales. You are worthy of being here, no matter what your manager says, your peers say, but show up and show out. That's the thing that I say. And do it with dignity. Do the right thing, own it. I don't care if people cheating and you do the right thing because it's still gonna show. And yes, sometimes we gotta work a little harder, but I promise the reward is bigger. To where, coming from Cleveland, I grew up better than most of my cousins, but they're looking at me now. I'm in Atlanta. I'm successful. I own a home. I built my home from the ground up. I have nieces that go to great colleges. Sales has changed my life to where I'm able to change my family dynamics. And so that's why it's passionate to me. My parents were very well off because we lived in Shaker, but I took it up a notch. I moved to a whole nother city and state and planted my own seed and grew. And so I want to let my people of color, my Black folks know it's doable. It's hard work. Yes, it is. But the outcome, I wouldn't change my story for anything. I'm very proud of my story. I love my growth. I even love the roadblocks and the bumps because that's made me Rhasheeda. That has made me me.
Where are you directing people to get this type of fellowship and support? Are there certain kind of online communities that you tell people to check out? Anything for like women in sales, or specifically for African-American women in sales, or any of that? I'm aware of a few, but I'm curious, what are some of your favorite that you've gotten the most value out of and you kind of send people that way?
So there's one that I joined a couple years ago. It's Black Women in Leadership. She's based here in Atlanta, and she works specifically with Black women in leadership, whether they're C-suite, frontline leaders. That program was phenomenal. You have Sisters in Sales. For women, you have Women in Sales, which has been very great as well too. I will say this: there's communities out there, but I don't think sometimes the communities are being transparent, which is the problem, particularly for the Black community in tech sales and being in sales, like really telling the truth of like what's really going on. And also exposure. You know, it's funny. My niece goes to Clark Atlanta, and I was moving her in last year, and the guy was like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm a sales manager in tech sales." He was like, "That exists?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I explained it to him. He was like, "Oh my God, I gotta." He was like, "Let me follow you on LinkedIn, and if you need an intern," I said, "Yeah, we're always looking for interns in sales." So I think more of being honest of what's happening in our community, creating unity, and then lastly, exposure to our young Black kids and also women as well too. That this is a field that you can get into and become very successful and flourish and grow, because sales is the heartbeat of all of these organizations and big companies and corporations. If you don't have a sales team, you don't have nothing. You know, I don't care what anyone says. Yes, we all know the job market is iffy, but they're gonna always have a sales team. Let's be clear. If it's one person, they're gonna have a sales team. I promise you that. So sales will never leave. It's gonna evolve. But I would like to see more communities for Black folks, women in sales, but also just not providing information, but a place where people can talk about their experience and get uplifted, because that's something I think that is definitely needed if you are a minority in sales.
Yeah, yeah. What do you let's say this person comes in, young man, young woman, African American, and they're like, I'm intimidated, I'm afraid. You know, they're early in their career. Like they're like, what? That's something you could do. What do we teach someone about that? And because I know Scott and I are very conscious of, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I see that you are a non-Caucasian person. I don't hold that against you, but I've learned that, well, sometimes people who are not white feel like that's how they're being viewed. And I don't think I'm giving off microaggressions. Maybe I am. I have no idea. But what do you tell that person who's looking for that first step, that first piece of confidence? It's usually somebody early in their career, or maybe it's someone who's having to pivot their career, from something and getting into sales. What do you do to help them start to feel more comfortable about this role and their presence in this role?
You're gonna have to be comfortable with yourself, because it's like Batman. You're gonna have the good guys, you're gonna have the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've learned is you got to find your allies. That's something I've always done, is find my allies, my Caucasian allies, because what they have taught me is how to have the conversation with the bad guys, if that makes sense, so that you can get the buy-in, because you got to get buy-in from everybody. Let's be clear. Mm-hmm. Sales is still politics if you want to move up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you just do a good job, it is what it is. And so you got to get buy-in from both sides, the good and the bad. So I've always got buy-in, found an ally, been transparent of, hey, XYZ I'm having problems with getting across to, and that has helped me have those conversations with the bad guys. But you first have got to have confidence. No one's going to vouch for you in this role. You got to vouch for yourself. That's something I teach every single person walking into sales. You got to be the loudest and smartest person in the room. Not just loud, you got to be smart and make it make sense. You just can't be in there screaming and yelling, because that's not going to work. And you have to be very strategic. But you're going to have to talk to everybody. That's just how this works if you want to grow within this role. But it requires you being confident in yourself, your skill set, getting a mentor outside of work. That helped me tremendously. Get you a Black mentor, white mentor, man, Asian. I have all of that. Let's be clear. Because again, it teaches me how to communicate with different cultures and things of that nature. And everyone has different perspectives. That's something that's key. I tell anyone in sales, you got to have multiple. I have 7 mentors. And everyone brings a different perspective. And it's like, okay, now I have, I could put my formula together now. I got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I think people walk into sales like, you can't do it on your own. Let me be clear. My success is by no means just me. It's my mentors, it's my family, it's my friends, and my spiritual piece. Let's be clear. And so you have to have all of that to be successful and to hold that weight, because sales is competitive. It's a lot going on. And so you got to be able to have these folks that you can lean on.
So how do you, well, time is flying on this. Holy cow. How do you, so I agree with you. I was taught to call it, and I call it my personal board of directors, right? You go find someone, and I do work with people. I'm like, okay, if you're a woman, you need to have a woman. If you're African-American, you need to have someone else like that on there. You need a financial person on your board of directors. You need a spiritual one. You need all these different things. How do you help someone learn to choose? So again, I'm thinking about this person early in their career, right? And they're like, yeah, I kind of get it, but they don't know what they don't know either, right? Like many of us. Where do you tell them to start as they look for those mentors or that personal board of directors? Because it's not like overnight you're going to get 7 of them and they're all going to be great. It doesn't work that way. What advice do you give to people to just start that process?
The first mentor you should have should be someone who's teaching you a skill set that you're weak at. Because now you're going to get a good buy-in with that person. You're going to get a good relationship. They're teaching you something you don't know. That was my first mentor. Teach me how to be a manager, because I knew I wanted to be a manager when I first started in this. And they taught me how to think in a manager. This was my path. I'm not suggesting it. I knew what I wanted to do. That's just me. So for high level, you don't know how to make cold calls. There's someone that I know that comes top of mind to help me with cold calls. His name is Morgan Ingram. That's someone I would be reaching out to. Hey, can you mentor me on cold calling? That's how you enter into it. And you say, look, I love what you taught me and I want to continue this, right? That's how I started. I knew I wanted to be a sales leader and I asked them to teach me. And this person is still my mentor. The second piece is, where do you want to go? I started mine backwards. So I started where I wanted to go. But the second piece should be where you want to go. So I knew I wanted to go to leadership, or if you want to become an AE or enterprise AE, get someone in that sector who's going to teach you that piece. Get someone who's going to teach you how to communicate. Getting someone who teaches you how to communicate is so key. And that's communication from communicating with your clients on a day-to-day basis, also communicating in the corporate setting, how to get your promotion. They're going to teach you how to talk, how to get a promotion and speak up for yourself in meetings. You want to get someone that's going to teach you diversity. That's important, so you can be able to communicate with everyone. And so these are actually people that I have in my book who can help me with everything that I need as I'm growing. But that's what I would suggest.
That's great. I really like that. I like how you sort of said, find that one skill you're not good at and start there. Like that's a really simple way to do it, because it can feel overwhelming.
But then that cycle, I would assume, should repeat itself, because now you're at this particular level that you're at right now, and presumably there's other levels above that you're not at yet, that maybe you want to pursue and get there. And so the mentor you had in the beginning for cold calling, let's say, is not the same mentor that can take you as a individual, solopreneur, business person, or a VP of sales. And so you have to go find a new one. And that's something that I think is difficult sometimes for people to accept, that they have to go restart this process.
Yeah.
And to your point about this college student who was like, damn, what do? You're a sales manager. You drive what car? Or are you making this much money? There's still levels for some of us who climb that ladder to a particular point, and we think we've made it. And then you talk to somebody and somebody else, and they're like, if I was earning what you were earning, Scott, I would literally jump off a bridge, because that's like terrible, And I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't even know there was other levels, right? So how do you know when enough is enough, and find that sort of balance point between the pursuit of everything and gratitude for what you've got, and deciding to go after mentors who can get you to these other places or not?
So I'll talk about my experience. So I got to the top of well, I thought I wanted to be a CEO of a company, and that kind of dwindled because I said I love sales. And I went to the AE Enterprise, which is kind of like the highest you really can go in as far as like a sales manager. I don't want to become in the C-suite. That's just not my, I like working with people. That's just me. That's something I figured out. And I said, this is cool, but it doesn't move me, if that makes sense. The money's great, and well, I love my AEs. Let's be clear. I love you, my AEs. It's not about you. This was about me. And I had an epiphany moment of I gotta go back to the foundation. And that's SDR. And so I went back into SDR about 2 years ago, being a leader of SDR. And why I went back is because I'm like, all these AEs coming up, they don't have a good sales foundation. And I really love sales. Like, what I hated was I saw a lot of AEs getting into these big roles and they failed miserably. And now I got to put you on a PIP because you don't have sales foundation, or I got to teach you that before we even talk about building a pipeline to close $1 million deal. And so what I said, it's my duty as a sales leader that this never happens again. So when do you know enough is enough? When your passion aligns with what you're doing. And so I have a passion for teaching SDRs good sales foundation. It's my duty as a sales leader and a sales queen to make sure that these new, young, innovative folks coming up, they got good sales foundation and they could close any deal. They have it in their mind. I tell my team that sales is 85% mind frame and the rest is just money making activity. Because if you got a good mind frame, that you're gonna close the deal. Because it was funny, my niece said, you don't take no. I'm like, I don't even know what no is. Like, what does that even mean? Like, that just means I need to come ask you another discovery question. Like, I even do it in my life. I'm horrible with no. Like, no means absolutely nothing to me.
I'm shocked. Scott, I would never know that about Rhasheeda. Would you?
No.
But that is aligning your passion. When you're passionate about it, it will align and it will click, and and people say you're crazy because you could become, a C-suite executive and I'm like, that's not my passion. That's my passion is where I'm at right now. Even my new company, my boss said, are you sure? I said, I'm sure. This is where I want to be. I want to make sure that the folks coming in this organization, particularly the sales, they got good sales foundation. They rocking and rolling, and I'm going to push them up to your team next. But this is my duty. This is my duty. This is my calling. And so I think that's when you know enough is enough. And sometimes you got to fail. You're going to fail. You're going to try. But I say with careers, do it with a passion, because then the money won't mean anything. You're going to make that. It's going to come. It's about planting seeds and making sure people are successful at what they're doing. And that's what I love about what I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This is, like I said a minute ago, this is like flown by. We're almost 45 minutes in. We always like to sort of turn it over to you at the end and see if there's a question we can answer for you. You've been super gracious to give us all this inspiration and motivation and knowledge. So thank you for that. But is there something you'd like to ask us? We'd be happy to help you.
Sure. So I'm going to flip it back at you guys. Where do you see sales evolving in the next, I'll just say 2 to 3 years? 10 years is a huge bite. But where do you guys see sales evolving in the next 2 to 3 years, or even just next year?
I think it is going to continue to be a struggle next year, and probably in that 2 to 3 year mark. I think if you would have said to us, what do you think it'll look like 5 to 10 years from now? In that time horizon, I feel more confident saying I think things might pick up again. But the last few years, last 2 years, have been really tough for people. And I think that we will continue to see a decline in pickup rates on the telephone. I think we'll continue to see a decline in response rates over email. I actually think that I disagree with you a little bit in terms of like people buy from people. I think that that has historically been true, but even people my age now don't care about that as much. And my kids 100% do not care about that. But in 2 to 3 years, I don't think that's changing yet. 5 to 10, now you're talking about teenagers becoming mid 20 somethings, and I think the whole game changes again a little bit. So I think we continue to see an evolution, all of this tech coming in, businesses trying to be more capital efficient, smaller teams kind of doing more with less, being more successful in that route. I don't think you're going to see these like 200 person SDR orgs anymore, that kind of thing. So those are a few, kind of off the cuff thoughts. Richard?
Yeah, I agree with everything, and I'd add a couple things that I think sales is we've gone backwards a little bit. We're going back to this fear mentality, right? The goals are still very audacious and unrealistic, based on promises made by leaders who don't know what they're really doing in the startup world. And that's not meant to mean that they're stupid. It means that they've just not done it, right? It's very different. If I work at a Fortune company and they've got 25,000 actuaries in the accounting department who can tell me down to the quarter penny what everything's going to do, there feels like there's more knowledge around what's going to happen. Not always, doesn't mean they're always perfect. But if you look at the startup community, it's still very fear-based, right? We've committed to this, we've raised this money, therefore we have to raise this much or something's going to happen, which translates all the way through the organization. So I think that's what really happened a lot last year. People started smoking the hopium that 2024 was going to be better. They hired up again because they'd cut so much last year. We're seeing some glimmers of hope along the lines right now, but it's not enough to say there's a trend, in my opinion. They're not quite anomalies, but they're not trends either. Like there's something happening. I think what's also going to shift too in the next 2 to 3 years is the organizations are going to have to go learn how to fish where the fish are. Right? Scott and I each have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old kid, right? Well, where are my kids fishing? I bought more things on TikTok in the last 3 months for my son than I ever thought I would. I don't even have TikTok. I don't even, the whole other issue, but that's happening. Whereas me, okay, every now and then I'll find something on Instagram and I'll buy it. So organizations are going to have to figure out how to get there. That's going to be an interesting piece. And they're trying to do that now. And I think they believe that AI is going to solve that problem for them, and it's not, right? And there will also be this reckoning, as there is every generation. In 10 years, when our kids do become adults and move into the job world, if they were moving into sales, how is Dell going to still sell, 500,000 computers? Right? Is what level of human interactivity is going to be needed and necessary, right? How is Gong or Zoom or any of these tools, how are those people going to want to buy? And nobody knows the answer to that question yet. We're so stuck in our cold call email perspective. And to Scott's point, those rates are going to continue to drop. So what do you do? Because these organizations, people are buying something somewhere, somehow. And that's the part that people haven't figured out. And I think that's kind of what Scott's alluding to, of like, we don't really know what's going to happen, but you better pay attention. Right.
I agree.
And the shift is the business to consumer model is shifted where we don't need to talk to humans. Right. That's what Amazon has taught us. Right. And I think we're all old enough to remember, like, I would never spend $1,000 on a computer and put my credit card in there. Now it's no big deal for me to go drop $5,000 on a TV or 30 grand on a car or 100 grand on a car. How that shifts into the B2B world, though, is I think is still to be determined. And that's what these next 2 to 3 years are going to be, is like continually trying to figure that out. Right. And I think I do wonder if that means more SEO, focusing on marketing and inbound events, because if the humans aren't talking to humans, they still got to go do their research somewhere. So the top of the funnel, I think, is going to change first. So that was a very long answer. Sorry. So
no, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So Rhasheeda, how can people get a hold of you aside from just Googling the Queen of Sales, right? How can they find you?
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find me, under Rhasheeda Hughes, and all of my links will be on my LinkedIn, but that is where I reside.
That's where, exactly.
What's
TikTok?
all reside
I'm on
now.
LinkedIn. Exactly.
Nobody ever says like, oh, my website is such and such. You're just like, you can find me on LinkedIn.
I'm the only one who gives out my cell phone number. So yeah, and they don't call. That's the funniest.
Because you're old enough to still use the phone. Nobody else is old enough that you talk to still use the phone.
That's because I sold in the 1900s, Scott. I sold in the 1900s. So
Queen of Sales and the 1900 salesperson, Richard Harris and Rhasheeda Hughes, everybody.
Thanks, Rhasheeda. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.